So let's see. I'm a male. I'm 40 to 50 years old. I was born in America, and English is my second language. I'm married. I have 4 kids. I have some college. I'm a homeowner, and my household income is over $150,000 a year. Now, that tells you a little bit about me, but do you really know who I am? Right answer. And for decades, this is what most brands and marketers had at their disposal to understand their audiences. This is what they use to draw messages, to target them, and hopefully sell them products. But as you can see, this information is quite limited, and it groups people in these large groups in order to understand how we can properly target them. So back in the mid-'60s, a lot of work was done to take what was a demographic analysis and then try to understand what really makes people make decisions, their motivations behind their values, their personalities, their lifestyles, and ultimately some of their attitudes. And the application of psychographic analysis was then put on top of this demographic view. And what it allowed individuals to really understand was what makes people tick. And by doing that, we were able to draw a more colorful understanding of these audiences so that marketers can talk to them in a little bit different way. So, with that, I love Wes Anderson movies. I'm a music festival junkie. I also meditate as much as I can. I stay away from carbs except from those cheese curds that we had last night at dinner. I'm a night person. I'm a Democrat, but I follow Trump on Twitter. Believe it or not, I do. And I believe in global warming, love California cabs, and I've never eaten at Jimmy John's, even though there's one right out in front of my hotel. So now you know a little bit more about me, and that hopefully gives you a more colorful insight into who I am. Now, that is a really good way to get to know somebody. But in order to take this and apply it at scale, how do we now take this information and use it to really look at large groups of people so that we can now target them in a more meaningful way? Well, in order to do that, we got to go back to the beginning. I mean, like way back to the beginning. When we all came together and we congregated in tribes and communities because of one basic instinct, survival. We needed to get together to kill the woolly mammoth or we would die. We did this because we needed to survive and we needed to live. And today, those same communities and those same tribes are self-identifying. They're telling you who they are. They come together because of shared interests, things they have in common, affinities they have for one another, areas of passion, areas of just sheer joy. And sometimes groups and tribes come together because of times of distress, times of need. For example, my 18-year-old son, when he was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 10, forced me into a community that I never thought existed, or one that I never thought I needed so much to be a part of my life. So what we're looking at is why people are congregating together is fundamentally changing. The difference is when you start to look at them now based on their interests alone, they all start to look the same as well. So now we have to start to look at them not just as groups, but as subgroups, and getting into understanding how and where they can truly make a difference. And so what we have to do and what brands have been able to figure out is they got to move beyond just selling them products and just creating a transactional engagement or an experience that just moves money from one exchange to the next. They needed to build and create a much deeper bond between the brand and the consumer so that they become inseparable. This idea that we're better together. This idea that with this combination that you can go and accomplish just about anything. And when it's done correctly, this is what it looks like. Some school, in some university, that has truly understood the power of what a brand affinity looks like, except for that poor kid in the bottom right-hand corner. I always feel bad for him. Like he just didn't get the memo or he didn't quite get the discount. But this just shows you the power of what a connection with a brand looks like. But yet, no matter how powerful these connections are or how deeply rooted you are in almost Americana, in our culture, in the fiber of our DNA, your brand has to constantly evolve. You always have to be looking for new audiences and understanding their needs and their motivational states. And you have to constantly be looking to find out where the next generation of motorcycle riders are, or you too will be challenged with the perils of extinction. And so how do we do that? Brands need to drive a much stronger connection with their audiences by moving away from just being different or unique that is table stakes. It's all about relevancy. From the time you get up to the time you go to bed, you make hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions that are either going to be highly logical, they make sense, they're rational. Other things just make you feel good. They're emotional. What a brand has the ability to understand now is how can I move that lever between the left and the right so that I can target, understand, and communicate with you in a more meaningful way so that I can become relevant to you, not just in the transaction, but in the loyalty over time. And what we used to do in order to understand these audiences was something called focus groups. We'd put a bunch of people in a room, take them into a very, very unnatural habitat, ask them some questions, and guess what? Get some answers. Put an alpha in the room, they take over the conversation, you get groupthink, you get pile-on, and before you knew it, you create false positives and false negatives because you're asking somebody their opinion. And if you ask somebody their opinion, guess what? They're going to give it to you, whether they actually had one or not. So how do we truly understand what's going on? We can't just ask questions and listen in artificial environments. A guy by the name of Kevin Roberts, who's the CEO of TEDxIowaCity, said something wonderful. He said, if you want to study a lion, you don't go to the zoo. You go to the prairie. You have to watch things in their natural habitat to truly understand how they behave. So, how do we now take the learning of a lion and apply it to humans? Well, very simply, there is a giant prairie out there that's been created because of the internet. About half the population on Earth today has access to the internet, and over 3 billion people are actually online using social media at any given time. On top of that, over 80% of people under 50 years old in the US alone are using social media multiple times a day, creating tremendous amounts of data and information that we can now access and glean into. Now, it wouldn't be quite fair for me to look at this and say, how do we now apply that without truly looking at the totality of all these different pieces that we have to us? We now have something called social graphics. And social graphics is a very simple analysis that takes behavioral understanding and learning and listening and then applies it to very traditional demographic and psychographic analysis as well, so creating a much more robust view of our target audiences. So I've been talking a lot over the last few minutes about getting to know your audience. It wouldn't be fair to me to be standing up here and not get to know my audience, right? So this is my first time in Iowa. So I had to get to know you all. And to do that, I started from the beginning, right? I understood that you're a fairly young group. You are mostly married. You guys own homes. You're fairly white. Sorry, you are. And you produce a truckload of corn, right? But everybody, I think, probably knew some of that. But that really doesn't tell me anything really meaningful about my audience. So I grabbed a couple of analysts in the company, and I asked them to go and look at Iowans online. And we were able to find about 80,000 individuals that were geotagging Iowan conversations over the last 12 months. We took those 80,000 people, and we followed everything that they follow. It generated about almost 9.5 million unique interests, handles, things that you're passionate about. We then took all that information, did a clustering analysis where we put it all together, and we ended up with about 100 unique interests that basically united all Iowans in a more meaningful way. Now, to give you some context, it would have taken one of those 80,000 people about 222 days without sleep to do the same analysis we did in less than 10 hours. And I never asked one question. I just observed Iowans in the wild. And this is what we ended up with. You guys are a long ways away from corn farming. You're smart. You're extremely affluent in the way that you look at your sports, as you can imagine. But the difference in that is not just the type of sports that you follow, but the way that you're passionately engaged with them as well. And so we can look at these from a segment perspective, and these are things we call personas that allows us to build characters and build a better understanding of these individuals. But in order for me to understand my audience, I took a wild stab and guessed that we have a large group of informed professionals here. This makes up a good part of our analysis. And then when I dug in deep about the informed professionals, and this persona specifically, from a segmentation perspective, what we learned was something really interesting. We then took this information and we benchmarked it against what's called a normative data set. And a normative data set means everybody else. So you guys are 13 times more likely than the rest of the United States to go to grad school, right? You're also 17 times more likely to like beer. But not any kind of beer, microbrews. And you're passionate about Iowan microbrews. And not only that, you guys are, as stated obvious probably, with the 41 times of over-indexing on the politics. And the interesting part about the politics wasn't just the types of politics. It's how you guys actually consume data around news and information. Your media consumption is highly, highly informed. The knowledge that you get isn't just at the surface level. You're 62 times more likely to follow Politico or C-SPAN. I mean, that's as geeky as it gets. I mean, this is like, you guys are news junkies, but to be informed and to really go and form that opinion, you're going out and really making sure that you're smart enough to then form that. You also, when it comes to your broad range of followings, I have to meet folks that follow Sarah Palin, by the way. If you're here, let me know. We'll talk a little bit later. But you know, there's probably another 20 of these that we could have highlighted of folks that you're influenced by or that you're interested in following. And the fact that you're 89 times more likely to follow Paul Ryan is really informative in the fact that this is even a highly red state right now, right? So understanding this really gives us a better perspective on exactly how you guys are behaving online. You're extremely healthy, by the way. You're environmentally conscious. And the fact that you not just follow things that are at the surface level, but also things that are truly putting you outside. The fact that you follow Runner's World tells me a lot about how you actually engage with not just sports, but the way you actually think about your overall health. And then, this was a good one. You guys are funny. Or at least I hope you are. And you know, but in the analysis, what was interesting was the over-indexing on Stephen Colbert and Steve Martin. Those are what I would consider, even Sarah Silverman. This is what I would consider intelligent humor. It's not slapstick. This is smart stuff. You're not following baseline folks. You're following people that actually have a thought or an idea to get across, and they're using humor to do that. And then, kind of last but not least here, because I mean we can keep going on for a while. Everybody loves their fast food, and what was interesting was that even the fast food that you do follow has a slightly healthier spin to it. You're not following, you know, the dollar burger stores, and so that told me a lot about who you all are as well. And I would love to sit here and we can keep going and going and going, but you know our time is limited. So unfortunately, I have to leave you with a couple parting thoughts. Next time you find yourself trying to learn about your audience or trying to learn about something, instead of asking, why not start by listening? You'll learn a lot more. You'll discover what you probably need to then ask. And guess what? You just may discover something totally unexpected. Thank you.